The Rights to Ricky Sanchez podcast is presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. Sign up for DraftKings Sportsbook by using the promo code RTRS. Download their top-rated app. And brought to you by Adam Kasabi, the official realtor of The Process at processrealtor.com. Kornblau & Kornblau, the official law firm of The Process. LL Pavorsky Jewelers, where Rights to Ricky Sanchez listeners go and get engaged, and Kinetic Skateboarding get 9.1% off your first order with promo code Dave Silver. On the show today, the Sixers follow up a dominant win over Dallas with a true fucking clunker, a real Sixers run to Cleveland. The trade winds are in the air. The trade deadline is less than a month away. Kyle Lowry is a name that has been floated recently. Also, Victor Oladipo and PJ Tucker. And then an icon in R&B and an unfortunate Celtics fan, the great Michael Bivins of Belle Biv DeVoe, Michael Bivins of New Edition, Michael Bivins, who signed fucking Boys to Men, will join us as we talk shit about his under 500 Celtics team. Before we get going, subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you're listening, go subscribe to YouTube so you can watch it. We have a really awesome piece from Mike O'Connor coming later this week that will be on our YouTube channel. It will only be on YouTube. So Rights to Ricky Sanchez on YouTube. Please subscribe. Without any further ado, Amos and the Chef.
We were right, y'all. We were right. Even when it went wrong, we were right. We was right, y'all. We were right. So say the name. Say the name. We were right, y'all. We were right. Even when it went wrong, we were right. We were right, y'all. We were right. So say the name. Say the name. Say the name.
Welcome to the Rights to Ricky Sanchez podcast. I'm Spike Eskin, along with a guy whose Brian Dawkins, Allen Iverson, Jimmy Rollins, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Joel Embiid tattoo could come to life on somebody else if he just gives me the go-ahead. That is Mike Levin.
If I give you the go-ahead?
So a couple of people on Twitter volunteered to get the tattoo as long as we pay for it. And I'm in the tattoo community, so I can get somebody to do it. But I feel like you would have to say it's okay for that to happen. It's your dream.
Remarkable. I guess I would need to. It has to be in my image. Then I need to be able to.
Yeah.
Approve it. So
yes,
I guess let me see a couple. It needs to be embarrassing. It needs to be really like Gates of Heaven. Can you do like light coming down in a tattoo?
Yeah.
Can you do like shining from the heavens type thing?
Yes. Yep. 100%.
That's gonna look rough. That's a rough looking thing.
Well, the last time you mentioned you wanted them to be on the inside of an elephant or something.
That was a different. Yeah, I guess a different approach would be that one.
Okay. Well, I will reach out to the two people who said they would do it and make sure that they're sure. And if they're sure, I'm going to reach out to Tim Pangburn and see if he'll do an artist rendering, and then we can start the planning. Look, man, that game, you could tell 5 seconds fucking in last night that they were sleepwalking through it. Yeah. I mean, you could see it, and they tried in the second half to wake themselves up, and it wasn't enough, and you could see it. Like they weren't getting back on defense in transition. There was just no juice from them last night.
Yeah, I mean, a super 2019-2020 loss. Total lack of focus, just kind of always. Like, everyone except for Embiid shooting 9 of 19 from the line. That's unacceptable. Like, Simmons, who has been shooting great from the line, and I've been becoming like a very monitoring those decimal points every time, like, did not look good from the line, 1 of 4. And then, like, Korkmaz 1 for 3, and then the final miss at the end of the third quarter, ending in a full court, fast break, one man fast break for Sexton that nobody got back on, which is just very disappointing. And then Mike Scott missed both. It's just too much. You can't do that against the Cavs. And it was clear, like you said, from the top that they just didn't have it. But again, I think last year that game is because Embiid and Simmons have been playing so well. I think last year that game is a blowout and like an embarrassment, like a team meeting style, like close the doors, point fingers type of thing. And I think they're still good enough that even though, Seth shot 1 of 13, that won't happen again. It's the worst shooting night of his career. And guys made some bad decisions and turned the ball over too much and all that. But I think
Simmons was particularly sloppy in trying to throw passes that felt like all-star game passes and not, why are you trying to thread the needle there?
For sure. And the offensive foul. I mean, the offensive foul he had that negated a shake three that would have tied the game. He seemed to just kind of take his foot off the gas a little bit in overtime and started to get back to the like drifting away from the basket Ben that he does sometimes, that he did earlier in his career when he would just sort of like float a little bit, which that hook shot when it goes in is really nice, but I still prefer the go up strong guy, which we've seen more lately. But if Embiid hits that step back to end the game, then they win. And we talk about how they stole one in a game that they had no business winning, and that they're different. And so I think Embiid's mid-range the past like 3 or 4 games has started to regress, which is pretty funny to say, despite Embiid having 42 points on 22 shots.
Yeah, 42 points, 12 rebounds, 6 assists. He's regressing.
I mean, you could tell like he's been shooting like 70% on mid-range. It's just unbelievable numbers that no one's ever seen before. So it was bound to start happening, but you could tell like the automatic touch seems to be leaving him a little bit. But what I like to see was that he decided, all right, I'm just going to go right into Jared Allen's chest, and overpowered him a bunch of times, and got some vicious dunks there, which was nice. If that step back goes in, we're talking about how great this team is and how everything happens. And I think just it's one shot. I feel great about that Dallas win. That Dallas win ruled, and I think that the defensive intensity that they showed in that Dallas game. 2 shot clock violations in the first minutes. They had a 5-second call for a couple minutes later. It's just a ton of steals and turnovers, and made Luka look like totally lost, especially with Ben on him. Was really very cool. So I hope this is just they shot bad and didn't have much juice, but it is a concern as far as like without Tobias, Simmons and Embiid are great, and the drop off is steep. They don't have enough guys that can do multiple things, and even when Tobias isn't great, he still represents like another option, and Shake is still working his way back. But right now it's like Embiid and Simmons and a bunch of guys who can do the one thing that those guys can do.
I'm going to knock my fucking dog out, by the way. I'm never going to knock him out, but if he doesn't shut up, I'm going to kill him. So there are a couple of things that the coming out flat thing, I agree. And I think, did somebody mention it maybe in a post-game presser? I don't know. You're right. Last year it would have been like, oh boy, another dead game for them. And this year I don't feel the same thing. But the things that struck me as, things to really look at, first of all, Embiid talking about after the game how they need to shoot more 3-pointers. And when you're open, shoot it is something he said. And it's, when he's saying it and he's noticing it, it's just something to file away. The second thing being like, I don't know, their half-court offense is like, we'll get to the Kyle Lowry thing, but they need a real guard. They just, when things get sludgy like that, and this is the same thing that happened against Toronto, they just need somebody who can create a shot for himself. And then the third thing being, your point about Tobias is right, but I see people complaining about the bench all the time. Like, here's the thing, guys. When you have $100 million tied up in 3 players, your bench isn't going to be that fucking good. Like, it's just Brooklyn's bench looks terrible. Like even Boston's bench looks terrible. It's not easy to have and of course we want more out of them. And the last 3 years have not been helpful in creating like enough players there. But truly, when you're paying that much money to your top 3 guys, one of those 3 guys should always be able to carry a bench unit. Should always be able to carry a bench unit, or at least 2 out of those 3 guys. And we haven't really had that consistently enough. And that is the concern in putting that many resources in 3 players, is that you are wholly dependent on those 3 players. And, it's just like an allocation of resources game. So it's really going to come down to those 3 guys. Like those 3 guys just have to be fantastic all the time. And I personally don't think we can complain about Dwight Howard not being good enough, or fucking whoever it is they bring off the bench not being good enough. It's like, it's on those 3 guys at this point, and they're going to win a championship or not win a championship on those 3 guys.
I mean, maybe. I mean, I think Simmons and Embiid played pretty great, aside from some sloppiness from both guys at times. And the guys just missed shots because they ran him off the line. Seth Curry gets run off the line really easily. Maxey cannot be depended on right now to do much of anything. He is just totally unwilling to take threes when the ball's swung to him quickly. So he really shouldn't be out there, which is tough because his ball handling and pressure on the rim is a help to this team, especially when Simmons is not out there. I mean, Matisse attacked a closeout and finished at the rim. That was nice. Like the fact that we remember, that play felt like stuck in my mind, because it's like we just don't see it much from guys who can get all the way there. Like
all those things are true. I agree with all those things, but I just think it comes back to the question of like if you're allocating that much of your
for sure
you're like, it just has, and the question, we know Embiid is good enough to be paid that on this specific team, but the other 2 guys will just have to be performing at their top efficiency just at all times in the playoffs.
For sure.
Just
without one of them, it becomes clear that this team is limited. And it's just, there's too many guys. There's guys on this team that are just, this is exactly what they do. And they don't do much else. And sometimes they hit shots and sometimes they miss shots. But like, there is a limited amount of versatility offensively, right, especially in the half court with all these other guys. And occasionally Seth looks good, and we don't know how COVID's affecting him, which is interesting because he does talk about it. And I think he talks about it because he is on a 3-year contract, and there's a bunch of guys that I'm sure have gotten COVID that are on expiring contracts that don't want to talk about it because it affects their next deal. It's just a weird situation that we're going through. But it seems, Jason Tatum is another guy that talks about it a little bit, and it's just, so he looked really bad. Sometimes he looks good. I think it's just like, consistency levels are off, and it's really unknowable. So sometimes Seth looks like, he can run a little pick and roll, and he can finish in that mid range, and he's got touch all over the court, and he can draw the defense. And you can see even when he shoots 1 of 13, he's still so useful out there because the defense have to account for him. He still finished with a +7. That's like totally not surprising to me at all. But it's just like, too many guys on this team, especially when Shake's not like really clicking,
are limited.
That are really unable to do much else. Like, you think about the Raptors just as an example, and they seem like they have so many guys. Like, okay, Siakam's out. Like, Anunoby is a guy that can at least attack a closeout and finish around in contact or whatever it is. Like, sometimes you think about Mike Scott, who's playing better defensively and starting to look at the rim a little bit more, but you see him like attacking, and it looks like he's like galloping, and there's no one that's even considering being threatened by that ball pressure, and it's just not enough guys. And in the playoffs, it's going to be 7 or 8 guys. Whatever happens, they're going to make a couple trades, buyout market, whatever it is. But yeah, it's a really, as much as the spacing around Simmons and Embiid is nice, and there's a lot of like pieces that are elite at one thing, there's just not quite enough guys that you trust on both ends on this team yet. And it's really, for me, it's like 4. And when Shake's not like feeling really good, then it becomes 3. So it's tough.
I want to make sure we talk about the Kyle Lowry and Oladipo stuff. The only other thing I wanted to mention is Isaiah Joe went from being ahead of Korkmaz in the rotation to not playing in 2 games to sent to the G League bubble in 4 days.
He got sent to the bubble? I didn't see that.
Yeah, he's good. Now, the bubble only goes to March 11th, so they might just want to get him some run on the court before it's over.
Nice.
But yeah, he got sent to the bubble.
That's exciting.
Sunday morning.
It was a very quick Isaiah Joe minutes, and then who was hurt? Somebody was hurt, and then Korkmaz stepped in. It was somebody before.
Tobias.
Was it Tobias, or was it somebody before Tobias? I can't remember. Might have been Seth.
Curry was out, and then Tobias was out. Yeah.
I watched some of the bubble, by the way. Some Paul Reed and Rajon Tucker looking pretty interesting. Paul Reed, B-ball Paul.
Yeah, he's had a good bubble.
He looks like more comfortable, and it's weird to see someone look comfortable when they're that like awkward and random with the way their limbs are flailing about. Like there's his like elbow flares out when he shoots. It's just it's a very odd player that I'm excited about and have always been.
He's Arianis.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I can see that.
So
I do want to say two things before about the game. I thought that there was one Ben defensive play that I just want to call out in the Mavs game. He was obviously like incredible on Luka, and it's just very exciting to see how much how incredibly versatile Ben is on the defensive end. And his switchability and his motor and stuff. But there's one play that's just like instincts when Luka passed the ball to Willie Cauley-Stein and Ben almost instantly you can see his mind going like, Willie Cauley-Stein's not going to make the right decision here. And he just comes up from behind him and Willie Cauley-Stein's dribbling like he's excited about dribbling for the first time all game. And Ben just comes behind him and just pokes the ball out. He ran like
how does no one call that out to Willie Cauley-Stein?
I don't know. They might have, and he might have gotten nervous or something. I'm not sure. But like Ben, he ran like almost, as far as the court width, he ran halfway across the court. That's a good like 20 feet more that he got there really quickly and passed it ahead to Embiid for a dunk, which was nice. I also noted that Dallas went small after half, and they went with James Johnson, which was interesting. It's so exciting to see teams just reach into their bag to try anything to stop Embiid. They're like throwing assistant coaches out there. They're trying to tie up the ref like they're ringside managers or something in wrestling. Like any gamesmanship they are doing to make it a little harder on Embiid. It's really exciting to see how good he is and how much people have to account for him. And we got to talk about, Ben Simmons hits a 3 at the end of the game. You cash out. Very exciting for you. Yeah. But really,
only bet $5, by the way. It was plus 1,400 odds. I should have bet 20 or 10 like I normally do, and I didn't.
Sure, but I thought even the 3, even him taking that 3 doesn't mean anything. But he just looks different in the half court the last month or so. Like the team is still not quite effective. There's still a lot of things that need to be done to improve in the half court, but I think Ben specifically looks like so much more of a weapon in the half court with the ball in his hands from anywhere, that I think it's really inspiring for like what his future could look like if he keeps improving.
I would agree. The last 3 games, though, 6 free throws, 5 free throws, 4 free throws. Let's not. I don't want him to take his foot off the gas there. Like that's a necessary part of his efficiency is getting to the line. So I just want to make sure that. Well, I want to make sure. I would like him to make sure that he keeps his foot on the gas.
I think he was. There was a bunch of. I think he was aggressive in the Cavs game, and they weren't giving him calls. I think that they were bumping him and hitting him a lot, and he just wasn't getting it for some reason. I find it interesting that this team is so good at getting out in the fast break and so bad at getting beat in the fast break.
It's terrible.
It is a really interesting thing. I thought Danny had a couple nice chase down blocks. But then did the Danny of getting driving into traffic with a minute left and getting blocked by 3 separate people. That's kind of how it goes. But they're a really interesting team. You wouldn't think that this team, aside from Ben, like they're not a fast break team, but they're not like a ton of like athletes and guys who are just like flying down the court all the time finishing. It's really just Ben. But and you would think that defensively, they would be able to get back more. But I think that'll be something that they'll correct over the course of the season.
Mike, I got an email from Seth. Let me read you this email. Can we get some information on the timing of when Mr. Pavorsky started going by LL? Is this a childhood nickname that predated LL Cool J, or did he decide in the late 80s that if LL Cool J should do it, he should too? We all know ladies love him, so really hoping for the latter. If he decided to start using it after the late 80s, but claims to be uninfluenced by the rapper, I will not believe it for 1 second. What is your best guess?
I think absolutely influenced by the rapper. I think
right.
I think probably, when I don't know the year LL Cool J came into like popular culture. I would say a good 10 years after that, Lee adopted it. I think it was I don't think it was right away. He was like, "That's my guy. I'm going after it. I'm taking it too." I think it was a solid 10 years after. So
yeah, because
if we count late
back,
80s, late 90s then.
What?
Early 2000s? I mean, Cool J was late 80s? Came around?
Oh, yeah, mid 80s, early to mid. Yeah, like 83, 84. So if LL Pavorsky Jewelers only started 32 years ago, that's only 90. So that still brings him in after LL Cool J, even if he started it then. So whether he stole his nickname or not, he's our guy. The first ever sponsor of the Ricky 211 rights to Ricky Sanchez listeners have purchased engagement rings from LL Pavorsky, LL Fraud Pavorsky. Maybe there'll be a Cornblow lawsuit against LL from LL Cool J. He's the only one you can go to buy an engagement ring or any kind of jewelry. Everything is by appointment only to keep safety and make sure he has also enough time for you, whether it's in person, on the phone, online. Get at him and make an appointment. Lee at llpavorsky.com. You can tweet at him at llpavorsky or just call the shop 215-627-2252. Everything, if you do go in there, it'll be only you, and you get to see Lee in the mask and the face shield in a suit, which is a special kind of thing. Lee also supports our charities, Coded by Kids and Providence Animal Center. LL Pavorsky Jewelers.
Gender is a construct, but they all love Pavorsky.
So Keith Pompey reports two rumors this week. One, that the Raptors would like to reward Kyle Lowry by sending him to a playoff contender, and that he's pushing for Philadelphia. By the way, as the Raptors are in their most effective 2-week play of the year.
But isn't that mostly without Lowry, though?
Yeah, but he's played well, and his agent denied it. But so whatever. And then he also reports... or did he report or did he just write about, Oladipo is obviously going to be available and PJ Tucker will obviously be available. So my first thing, Lowry makes $30 million. So we mentioned this before. You automatically, Green's got to be in there, Scott's got to be in there, maybe Ferguson, Poirier gets you to 25, and then whatever player they actually want. And then you figure it's going to be a first or two. The real question for Morey on this is how close does he think that they are to a championship, and is it worth spending assets that could be a part of a more serious trade in the offseason to do the Lowry thing? You were originally sort of a no, but you've changed your mind.
Yeah, I think that they are close, and I think that especially with Ben's improvement, having another ball handler that could run pick and roll, set up the offense, all that stuff. I don't think it's a perfect fit. I don't think, especially with the other guys here, I don't think a Lowry, Curry backcourt is great. Defensively, I mean, but I think that Lowry still has a ton of juice in him. He's a great leader. He's a floor spacer when Ben has the ball, and he can run offense himself. He moves the ball fast. He'd be instantly the second best passer on this team, maybe the first, just in terms of speed and precision. Mm-hmm. And he's a Philly guy. It'd be so cool to bring him home. And it feels narratively right to that's how we'd win a championship, is bringing Kyle Lowry back after he was in Toronto for so long, and then Kawhi comes in and then he wins one. I feels like Lowry being the final piece here feels just really very cool.
So if it costs those players 2 firsts and Maxey,
I don't think it would. I think that would be too much. But
1 first and Maxey.
Yeah, maybe you do that.
Well, it's got to be at least a first.
It's got to be at least a first. But
And a player, I think.
Probably. I would say probably.
Yeah.
I think that there's, the gamesmanship of like, hey, he wants to come here. He's expiring. You're going to get nothing for him. Like, there's good vibes to be had of you doing right by this guy who's beloved there. But they are good. I mean, they are still good and will probably end in the sort of 4-5 range.
They could win a round. They could win 2 rounds.
Absolutely. Yeah. It would be cool. I would feel very skittish on giving up Maxey this early for what might be a half-season rental. I think the idea would be if you trade for Kyle Lowry, then you go, okay, we're going to sign him to a 2-year deal with his bird rights so he can retire here.
2 years, $40 million or something.
I hope you can get it for less, but yeah.
I don't think so.
But then they might not be able to afford him then.
Yeah.
I don't think that you go, all right, let's do, Maxey and Matisse or 2 firsts or whatever it is for a half season rental. I just don't think you can do that. I think you have to think we are going to sign him for 2 seasons after this. And whether it's Maxey or whoever you get in the draft, that's going to be the who Lowry is mentoring to be the next guy that steps in. And it'd be nice if it was Maxey. If they held on to Maxey, like I would love for Tyrese Maxey to grow under Kyle Lowry. That would be the coolest thing. Or maybe it's just Shake. Maybe they just decide that Shake can be like point guard level person of the future. In a Lowry type way, I'm not sure. But yeah, I'm less concerned about depleting depth, especially for the playoffs, than I was, because I think you just like there's going to be buyouts, there's going to be guys available, there's going to be like salary cap trickery that you can do. And
here's my other question before we get to Oladipo and Tucker. Essentially, would cost money wise the same thing. So for those assets, theoretically, you could both of those guys, which would give you a second rotation player. The real question to me is, when was the last time that a team traded for a starter, a significant starter, top 3 player on the team-ish,
Marc Gasol, before
the trade deadline and won a title?
Marc Gasol in Toronto.
No, I mean it's not the same thing.
100% it was. He was like the 3rd or 4th best player on that team. He absolutely helped that defense and carried it through. I don't think they win the title without Gasol.
Well, maybe, but I don't think it's the same thing. I don't think it's the same thing when you're talking about a person who's probably going to have a usage rate of 25 on your team, or and Marc Gasol, who doesn't touch the ball at all.
Sure, but he was extremely relevant to the defensive side of the ball, and became immediately way better at communicating and walling up, and sort of allowed their identity to flourish as like, because we have Gasol back there, like sort of orchestrating things. They can fly out on shooters and not feel like they're left naked back there.
Okay, I don't think there's a lot of them. I guess I would say I will give you Gasol. I don't think there's a lot of these things that happen and end up working, just because it takes so long to really get a rhythm with players. We've seen this year. I don't think it's accidental that a team like Utah is, and even a team like the Sixers. A team like Utah has so much consistency year to year, and they start off the season really, really well. I don't think the Lowry or Oladipo, whoever they trade up, is not going to have a ton of time with this team to figure it out. So I think it's something else to consider. Would you be interested in Oladipo / Tucker?
I mean, I think that you could get Tucker with the trade exception
without giving up
for probably a pick or 2 seconds or something like that. So I feel like I think Oladipo's pretty good. I think he's having a weird year, and I think he needs to sort of like stabilize at a place and know what his role is. I think he's a guy that could easily kind of fall off and be a little bit, if he's not on the ball, he becomes a little bit useless, or just scattered and not knowing exactly what he's doing. So I think as far as a fill-in guy leading into a championship on this team, Kyle Lowry is a way better fit than Victor Oladipo by a lot.
I agree.
And so I think that there's the concern of like, how can you integrate someone midway through the season? I'm more concerned about Oladipo. Lowry, I just feel like it would work. I think he's smart. I think him and Doc would figure it out. I think he's the ideal guy. He's the ideal third guy next to Simmons and Embiid, and he has been for a while. It's not surprising that we've kind of talked about this a bunch of times over the last like 3 or 4 years, because Kyle Lowry is like defense, shooting, plus a good amount of ball handling, and just like being the right seemingly mindset. That would be like, I'm just imagining Embiid lifting up Kyle Lowry after a drawn charge, like in the conference finals, and like being so pumped about it. Like it just feels right. It just feels really right.
I agree. I agree that Lowry would be a much better fit. I'm intrigued by the idea of Oladipo, but boy, the last 2-3 years, like you just don't see very much of him or what he's done. And I don't care that Kyle Lowry doesn't have a contract after this year, but the idea of Oladipo gunning for a contract, because it's much more important in his career, based on where he is in his career, than it is for Lowry. Like Lowry knows what he's going to get after this year, but I feel like Oladipo is out to prove something in a bad way. And the minute that he's not getting shots, I don't think he's a bad guy or anything. I think the vibe could get weird very quickly with somebody in that position, like Oladipo is.
Sure.
We'll see. I would bet on it not happening, but it would be nice if it did. I think that's where I am.
Well, you've been betting on Simmons hitting a three with that exact mindset, that exact rationale for months now.
Point.
So
yeah, and I'm only $400 in the hole even after winning one.
That's right.
Mike, so the last time we talked about Adam Kasabi, the process realtor, who now is serving all of Delaware, including Newcastle County and the beaches and wherever you are, we were joking about the difference between northern and southern Delaware, given that the physical distance is not that far. And we got several emails lambasting us for suggesting.
Doesn't seem to be surprising.
We offended Delawareans. Yeah. Now, one person said, I do imagine this is likely true, having been to the Carolinas or even Maryland, that southern Delaware thinks that they're in the South. And I don't think we're talking about the shore points, but maybe the non-shore points, southern Delaware, that you kind of think, I don't know if you've ever been to the Carolinas or even Maryland. Sometimes it feels like you're already in the South when you get there. So I suppose that's possible. Adam Kasabi is the official realtor of the Ricky, the official realtor of the process. And now, so he focused on Delaware beaches before, now still has a focus on Delaware beaches, but he's got a whole team of realtors covering Newcastle County all the way down to the beaches. Newcastle County is Wilmington. So whether you want to move to northern Delaware, which is very, very different than southern Delaware, whether you want to buy a home in the Delaware beaches, he's got you covered. Northern to southern Delaware, based out of Long and Foster in Bethany Beach, every square inch of Delaware. And Kasabi also has helped a number of our listeners with homes outside of Delaware. He can't sell it to you, but he'll always connect you with the right person. So whether it's PA, Jersey, New York, whatever, or if you want to refinance, he can help you with that too. I've mentioned the benefits of Delaware as far as real estate, much, much, much lower property taxes, especially when you're comparing Jersey Shore to Delaware beaches. And these interest rates not going to stay this low forever. So take advantage if you can. A very trusted member of the Ricky sponsor community. 302-864-8643. 302-864-8643. A special going on. If you sell in northern Delaware and buy a house at the Delaware Shore, he will pay $1,000 toward your moving expenses, and make him pay every penny. Don't let him cheap out on you. Adam at processrealtor.com, and that number, you can text it to. Adam Kasabi, Ksebe, processrealtor.com. So as you're listening or watching this pod, there is like, in between what I was saying there and now, we stopped the recording so we could wait for Michael Bivins. No Michael Bivins. Like, do you think it's because the Celtics are under 500? Is he fearful? Does he know?
It would be a good way to punk us, I think.
Yeah, as a fuck you from Celtics Nation.
Yeah, these Sixers fans are getting a little too high on themselves. I'm going to say I'm going to go on the Sixers podcast and then not show up. I mean, it's a good move, I think.
Yeah. I was pretty excited, honestly, I'm obviously much older than you, but having lived through Belle Biv DeVoe and lived through New Edition and then been a huge Boyz II Men fan, it was pretty fucking cool. I was pretty psyched, actually. And now no Michael Bivins. No Biv. So
we'll get Biv.
What do you get?
We'll get him.
Yeah, we'll get Biv. Next time he'll have to wear a Sixers jersey during it or something as a punishment.
The fans demand Biv.
Fans demand Biv. The hard to stomach YouTube comment of the week brought to you by Kinetic Skateboarding. Get 9.1% off your first order with promo code Dave Silver. As we some great cargo pants, new Kinetic cargos. I imagine you're not a cargo guy. I love cargos.
I'm not a cargo guy. No, yeah. I don't need anything. I need nothing in my pocket. At no point.
You want negative pockets, right?
It's like, what are we doing in there?
Yeah, well, spring is coming, man. So if you want some shorts, I was talking to Ben at Kinetic about doing another edition of the mesh shorts, which I'm sure you loved. Maybe you can wear them in your first basketball game back. So.
Really just hurting yourself, stretching, pulling a shoulder, not to say a new edition of their mesh shorts.
I hadn't even thought of that. A new edition.
It's right there.
Fuck, man. Get 9.1% off your first order with promo code Dave Silver at kineticskateboarding.com. All right. The hard to stomach YouTube comment of the week comes from Jeremy Denny. Being an Australian citizen, I am willing to take one for the team and marry Joel so that he can join the Australian national team where he, Ben, and Matisse can have a lovely chemistry building off-season getaway to the Japan Olympics. I'm sure winning a gold medal would be better for Ben and Joel's relationship than some lame trip to Napa. Matisse would obviously vlog the trip so we could see how the relationship further develops. Are you in favor of Jeremy marrying Joel? Joel's not married.
I'm absolutely in favor of Jeremy marrying Joel. I don't want Joel playing more minutes, so I don't need him to be playing for any national team. I actually don't know if is he playing for Cameroon? Has he announced that at all?
No, I've not seen anything about that.
So I'd prefer him to rest up. But the idea that Ben and Joel, and it's like, we also need Matisse there. We need him. We need him for chemistry. He's got to. Just him like latching onto the trip and being like.
Well, Matisse is on the Australian national team. Do we know? Yeah. How does that? He's not Australian, is he?
I think he lived there for a little bit as a kid.
I wonder what I literally have no idea what those rules are. Whether you can.
I think it's a soft. If you have lived here or you have family that have lived here, it's like close enough.
If you like AC/DC or NXS. Something loose rules, loose rules,
for sure.
Loose rules. And by the way, just to close the loop on the Lowry Oladipo thing, I do agree with you. I would not trade for Oladipo. Would you? I would take a flyer maybe on Oladipo. Maybe if he didn't cost anything. He's
a guy I would look at in the offseason. I would see what the situation is there. But as far as during the season, it just seems like tough to integrate.
Right. Yeah. Lorenzo Brown Mailbag. Send us an email, writesturikisanchez@gmail.com. One basketball, one non-basketball question. I figured you would love this one as it brings the Phillies and the Sixers together. This comes from David. Hey guys, love the pod. Been listening since it was a glorified phone conversation, which it still is, I guess, but been working through some thoughts on how the current Sixers compare to the last team I followed this closely and felt this invested in, the late aughts Phillies. Let me take you through some of my thoughts and would love to hear what else you guys think. Simmons to me is a combination of Cole Hamels in that detractors seem inclined to label him as soft or otherwise not right for Philly, and Ryan Howard in that there's such a tendency to focus on what he doesn't do to the detriment of appreciating the Phillies.
All right, I'm on board so far.
You're on board, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was a perfect comp. Joel, meanwhile, is an amalgamation of Jimmy and Chase. Mm-hmm. Jimmy in that he's the vocal leader of the team and willing to talk trash that he'll go and back up. And Chase in that he's just the player that most often makes plays that make you chuckle and feel like you're watching a player that you'll never forget watching.
Fair. Reasonable.
Right? Mm-hmm. Good so far. Doc and Charlie seem to share the quality that they don't seem to have changed a ton tactically with the team, but came in and totally improved the vibes.
That's fair. That's a reasonable way to say it. Yeah, sure.
I think it's so much harder to even know what the fuck a baseball manager does unless they do something wrong, honestly. But Charlie was definitely A+ in vibes. There's just more to do tactically with a basketball team than there is with a baseball team, but I think it's all right. It's imperfect, but I'm going to say there's a little bit of Gillick Ruben Amaro Jr. to the Darrell Elton thing.
I don't see it with Elton, but if you go back to Colangelo, then I'd maybe have more arguments there.
Oh, really? You're not going to...
I don't think, because Elton... Oh, I got so mad I knocked my headphones off.
That's all right.
Elton, I think, he's still there, so it's hard to, like, Amaro, and I mean, like, and maybe an Ed Wade situation, there is some, like, the guy that was here before, and I'm like, why do we have this person? Oh, I guess it's because of Colangelo. There's not many of those guys. It's really just Korkmaz, and I guess I'm not going to give him credit for Ben. And I guess Colangelo melts into the Elton Brand era, which is why we have Shake and stuff. So, yeah, it's close. There's weirdness there, but I don't know that the current roster backs it up.
I think Shake is the Victorino, but I'd also hear an argument for Matisse. It's 100% Matisse, I think. Shake doesn't have the Victorino personality. Like, Victorino, I interviewed him once. I've never spoken to somebody with a shorter attention span and just sort of has that goofy sort of everybody loves him vibe, but like, he's going to do something wrong at some point. Sure. I don't know. I think Victorino is a much better player than Matisse is, at least currently, but I think the vibes comp, right?
I feel like Shake is Jason Worth. I think he's a little bit ornery. He's like long in a fun way. He's good. He's a two-way player. I feel like Shake is Worth.
And then finally, a couple of other notes. I think this really cements the Covington Abreu comp. Boy, I hate this podcast. How many times we've mentioned Bobby Abreu?
Bobby Abreu, baby.
I think
Godfather
Dario would
of
have
us all.
I think Dario would have really grown into a Sixers Chooch kind of role, but I'm not really sure there is one. And as my fiance pointed out, we're also missing a Bradledge closer on the Sixers. Also, sadly, this would probably project Maxey in the Dom Brown role.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. I love Dominic Brown. Holy shit.
He literally had one good month.
Dominic Brown.
One good month.
Yeah. I think that Korkmaz could be Chooch. I think there's like a boyish spirit to both of those guys. Like Korkmaz saying it is saying that when he hit the shot against Portland that it was the best moment of his life. I feel like Chooch doing that is similar. There's a happiness there. There's also a moment in the Mavs game where Korkmaz and Embiid were smiling at each other that I found pretty delightful. I could see that. I guess a Bradledge situation. You could say it's Seth. But it's hard to get there. It's kind of tough to get there.
Yeah, I think in this case they were talking about an actual like closer, like on the Sixers, which they don't totally have as of right now.
Trying to find a place for Tobias. I guess maybe Tobias could be worth, or Tobias I guess is part of Ryan Howard in the overpaid situation.
Yeah, in the '93 Phillies, I feel like Tobias is Jim Eisenreich.
I guess Tobias could be like Ibanez. Like an Ibanez Ryan Howard mix of like overpaid.
Is Tobias on steroids?
Was Ibanez a steroids guy?
Oh, come on.
I don't give a shit about steroids. Like, it just so doesn't matter to me. Like, the different gels and lotions and shit, it's all the fucking same. It seems like you're parsing over stuff. I just couldn't give a shit.
I don't know for sure, obviously, but when you look at it, it's like guys don't really have career years at like 36. It doesn't
you never know.
Really make any sense. So this comes from Arsenio, a regular emailer now and a good emailer. I feel like this first question is specifically for you. I just said, quote, Ben Simmons is my fucking uncle in response to his spin and score on Luka. Luckily, my wife was in the other room with our daughter. What's the weirdest thing you've said while watching a Sixers game? I'm sure Mike has some gems.
Too much. I could never do a podcast during a game, like a Mystery Science Theater, like during.
Oh, I'm sure you're
during
intolerable.
I I don't know about intolerable, just more like manic. Like it's not a fun time. And so when I will say this year it's been better. Obviously they've been winning, so it's easier. But I feel like even in the losses this year, I've been significantly more well behaved. Maybe just because the whole season is happening during like quarantine pandemic situation that I'm just like I don't have much left to give. Yeah. But I don't think I could do it. I really don't know. My brain isn't operating on like all cylinders when the Sixers are playing.
Ben Simmons is my fucking uncle. This is a grown man. Say that 24-year-old Ben Simmons is his fucking... Well, I guess you could have a young uncle. Doesn't make any sense. Random question for Spike. I usually listen to the pod while running. It'd be great if you can randomly say, keep going. You've got this to keep me motivated. Thanks in advance.
Run, you
Arsenio,
asshole.
Yeah. Push through. Fucking push through, motherfucker. Mike, if at the end of this, the Sixers do not win a championship, do you think we will be able to bring a lawsuit against them for a waste of years and years and years of our lives?
I would certainly explore it. Yeah.
Yeah. I think there might be a, what's it called when you get a bunch of people in one suit?
Class action.
A class action suit. Yeah. We'll call Kornblau. Kornblau and Kornblau, the official law firm of the process. Adam Kornblau runs the law firm with his mom. You hear a lot about personal injury law firms. You hear them advertised on the radio. You see them on TV. You see billboards. And the thing is that it's not really personal service. When you see something on a billboard and you see a guy's face on a billboard, you call that law firm and you're not getting that person. It's really just a referral service. When you call Kornblau and Kornblau, you're getting a Kornblau. And, you know, personal injury lawsuits can take forever. They're confusing. They kind of suck. So having somebody like Kornblau in your corner, corner with a K, is a good thing. You want somebody in your corner like that. This law firm, Kornblau and Kornblau, been around for like 40 years. Some of the biggest medical malpractice results in southeastern PA. You don't even have to go there. He can come to you. You don't want him to come to you. You get him on the phone. And the other thing about Kornblau, he's such a good dude and so trustworthy. So many of our listeners have gone to him with other legal issues. He will take care of that for you too. Just email him. Kornblau at kornblauandkornblau.com. 215-576-7200. If it's personal injury, if you're hurt in any way and you think you might have a case, it doesn't cost you anything to call him. It doesn't cost you anything to email him, and he doesn't collect one penny until you collect something. 215-576-7200. Ask for Adam or email kornblau at kornblau.com. Kornblau spelled with a K. The rest,
it's up to you.
I love this email. It comes from Nathan from Perth, Australia. Question number 1. I don't know if this has been discussed before, but in the closing of Sam Hinkie's letter, he mentions that he is contactable on Twitter, which seems like a strange way for a business letter to end. Why would ownership ever contact him on such a forum? Do you think there's any chance he had some idea of the Colangelo's Twitter split personality disorder ahead of his departure?
Wait, he at the end of the resignation letter, he said he's contactable on Twitter?
So I'm going to look this up and make sure, but I seem to remember it being there.
I don't remember that.
Okay, wait, hold on. 13-page resignation letter. Hold on. The final line. I should have maybe double-checked this. But it
is so odd that the sort of the arc of the Sixers GM situation since Hinkie, including Hinkie. It is. Versus, okay. That's very bizarre. Versus
last 3. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
It's just very odd the arc of like going from Hinkie, who is like unreachable per like at least publicly. That was the whole deal with him, is that people like, you know, the media was just like, he's never talking to us, even though he was. And then there was Colangelo with obviously the burners. And then Elton, who has a Twitter account that is very convincingly Elton, but it's not Elton. And it never does anything to really like push the envelope aside from tweet, kind of like how Elton would tweet. Yeah. And then now we have Darren Morey, who's very publicly on Twitter, now retweeting the podcast with, I guess, compliments and a little bit of criticism. Very odd. Just a very odd run we've been on with our social media general managers.
The Elton Brand Twitter is one of the funniest things ever because he never really broke that fake character. Yeah. And I remember Elton telling me, like me asking him, are you sure that is not you? Yeah. And he's like, I promise. So the last 3 graphs of Hinky's letter, I will be repotted professionally. That is also uncomfortable. Most growth is, but it's also often healthier over the longest sweep of history, too. In the interim, I'll probably be with my wife and kids for a few weeks. If you need to reach me now or later, I'm available at, and then the email address is redacted. And I suspect someday soon on Twitter at Sam Hinkie. I wish you the best of luck. That's so fucking weird.
What an odd thing to do.
It's so weird.
Repotted professionally.
Oh, yeah.
That was one of the good lines that kind of got lost to time, and there's been only a couple of things that stand out. But that is what a specific and odd man.
Yeah, so specific and so odd. I think this is a question specifically for you, because if anybody knows this player, it would be you. I am from Perth in Western Australia. Local team, the Wildcats, are the most successful club in our league and have an American import player, Bryce Cotton.
Yeah.
He came to Australia as a replacement for another underperforming import. We're only allowed 2. Anyway, he was in Australia for 2 months and led Perth to the championship while winning Finals MVP. He has since won 2 of 3 possible league MVPs. The other one was given to Bogut on a sympathy vote, and won another 2 of 3 rings. The guy's a straight-out scorer, plays hard every game. It seems to me he'd be a great piece on the Sixers. For context, Ball played in the league last year and I thought was totally underwhelming and is doing some good things in the NBA, while Bryce is the MVP again. Is there a chance Bryce ever gets a shot?
Yeah, I mean, he did. He played a little bit earlier, and he's played a couple seasons, sparingly, 23 total games. He's short scoring guard out of Providence. Just poured it on in college, but is one of those kind of undersized all offense guards that doesn't. It has to be so special to make it in the NBA. But there's a lot of those things. It's like with the Sixers, it's like we got defense we got. So I think you could put somebody in there that can just get their own shot and get to the rim and stuff.
How old is Bryce Cotton?
He's 28, 29,
okay.
27, 28. Yeah. He can certainly pour it in. A very the tournament type player. Yeah, I don't think so, but I think it'll be it for Bryce. I just don't think he's big enough, but certainly professional bucket getter.
It is interesting how some of the good leagues, wasn't Sergio Rodriguez before we got him the EuroLeague MVP? Mm-hmm. It's weird how even in great leagues there are players that cannot hang in the NBA, but somehow I assume it's just the style of play that allows them to do it. Or honestly, something that you just mentioned, the size in those leagues just must not be anywhere near the NBA size.
I also think just there's a comfort level. Sergio Rodriguez was certainly an NBA player. He could certainly hang in the NBA the way Elfrid Payton or Howell Neto or whatever. There's plenty of he's certainly a rotation player. It's just a matter of wow, that guy was the MVP is a little wild to hear.
Yeah. All right, let's do a few more to replace Michael Bivins, who never showed up. So this emailer has emailed us 3 or 4 times. It's always very strange, and he's left Apple reviews, and some of the words in the email are all caps. He signs it, I remain, sirs, your servant in most things, and he calls himself Chip Mitchell. I don't know if you remember him, but his emails are always very strange.
Visually, it looks familiar.
Right. I write today, sirs, because you're the only podcast I know that answers bathroom questions and discusses basketball. My email is about both. I live and work in Boston. I'm going to accentuate his all caps words, where I find myself surrounded by Celtics people. Some of them are nice, some of them are children, the rest are goons. They used to not be such a problem, for whenever I would overhear them jabbering in the subway, I would just insert my earphones, raise the volume, and sink into some Sanchez. Your charming back and forth would drown out their submental chatter, and sometimes I would feel so reassured that I would fall asleep and may miss my stop. Once the conductor had to rouse me with his shoe.
Your podcast was so good, I fell asleep.
That's a good point. Lately, however, my coworkers Marcus Bigelow and Sven Krakow have started following me into the bathroom at work to taunt me about the Sixers. They tell me about how my team sucks and my shoes suck and other such things. They do not say, "You suck, sirs," but that is only because they don't know you. They also say I owe them money, but that is false. Now, I don't care one bit what these clods say or think about me. I move through my days in a perfect bubble of indifference. But I have noticed it causes a problem with what we shall call the process that usually occurs at a urinal. No matter my state of bladder, sirs, my tappeth runneth dry when these two clods stand on either side of me. They do not maintain social distance. Unfortunately, despite my best efforts, looking at the ceiling, flaring my elbows, emitting great satisfied sighs, they have noticed too. It has made them relentless in their pursuit of me, and Krakow's desk is right next to the men's room door. This is because he's not a valued employee. So I ask, do you have any experience with what is commonly known as stage fright at the urinal? If so, do you have any helpful advice? If not, I see three options. Number 1, ladies' room. Number 2, Snapple bottle. Number 3, dehydration regimen. You will say stall, but I don't want to do that. I don't want to talk about the stall. I should mention it would be a new Snapple bottle each day. I should mention that the ladies voted 5-4 to not let me use their restroom. I get urinal stage fright constantly. I have something that I do. I wonder if you do.
What a specific person this guy is. I really enjoyed this is because he is not a valued employee. I think that's a great line.
I fucking love the writing of this. I love it. I want to put it on a t-shirt.
I could get pretty easily psyched out of most things. Stage fright included. I playing Mario Kart with Alyssa. She was behind me and was telling me I was going to fall off the thing. I forget what level we were playing on, and then I did, of course, fall off. I'm very easily psyched out. I don't have like singular focus. So yeah, stage fright is included in that. I mean, that sounds like bullying. That sounds like straight up like a little bit abusive behavior from these.
They're following him into the bathroom to prevent him
who
from...
you've named. I would tell somebody, be like, "Hey, can you make them stop doing this? We're adults." I like that he's so vehemently against the stall, but I do think stall is the answer. It's a pretty clear answer there.
Well, all right. I agree. You go into sometimes I'm going to share my bathroom feelings. Sometimes I'll go into the bathroom, whether it be at work or somewhere else, and I go to use the urinal. And specifically, our bathroom at work only has one urinal, and somebody's at it, so I got to go in the stall. And it actually goes through my mind, if that person leaves at the urinal, I hope the next person comes in, doesn't think I just didn't go to the urinal and went right into the stall. Like I'm self-conscious even about that. My way of fighting stage fright at the urinal is to imagine, I've been doing this for years, a giant cup filled to the top with Mountain Dew and ice. The cup is sweating because the Mountain Dew and ice are so cold and it's hot outside, and the Mountain Dew is being poured out of the cup. That cures me of my stage fright.
Interesting. All the runners right now are stopping on the side of the road to pee because you just painted too clear of a picture.
I love Chip. His emails are incredible, and I would love to know more about Chip, or maybe I don't want to know more. This comes from Darian. Basketball question: who would win in a one-on-one game to 21 between a defense-only Embiid and an offense-only Embiid? For clarification, assume one Joel is as good as he is on defense, but has an offensive game of Ben Wallace. The other Joel is his normal self offensively, but has the defensive game of Greg Monroe. Who wins and what's the score?
The defensive Joel.
Really?
Yeah. Although I think it's been tough. I think I'm trying to imagine both of them. My brain is sort of hurting trying to think about how that game would go. But I do think anecdotally, it feels like Embiid has been scored on a little more regularly inside.
Do you mean by people driving or by centers?
A little bit of both. I think he certainly is still a good shot blocker and comes over to help a lot on drivers. But like it seems like quick guys that have a little floater to get up. I think he's always been fine like letting guys take floaters, but it feels like guys have been getting pretty decent looks off under him and they can get to the cup a little bit. And I do wonder if maybe just how good he is offensively and how much of a load he is taking up some of his defensive ability in the regular season, or at least his defensive, action. But they're still like a top 5 defense, so maybe not. But it just to my eye, it feels like people are scoring on him a little bit easier than they have been. I mean, I think that engaged defensively, Joel is really, really, really good against anyone. And I think engaged without an offensive game, I think would still be able to get by versus the Greg Monroe defense would just be untenable. I would trust Ben Wallace offense. I would trust Ben Wallace offense over Greg Monroe defense, I guess is what I'm saying. I guess that's the question.
Yeah, I would take in a one-on-one game, in a team-like setting, I would agree with you. In a one-on-one setting, give me the guy who can get the buckets as opposed to the guys trying to stop the guy from getting the buckets. Joel's ability we didn't even fucking talk about it. Dude, the Harden step back that he did against Cleveland. Like it was like 16 feet away, but it was a real step back. It was the same thing that Harden does. I just can't believe that a 7'1", 280-pound guy did that. I would take offensive Embiid, but I'm offense guy. Non-basketball question. As a place to live, what are some things you've noticed in other cities that you wish Philadelphia had? Well, I wish it had the weather of Los Angeles, but the one thing that I would say is that the public transportation in a city like Chicago or New York is so superior to Philadelphia, which has a train that literally only runs on 2 streets, only Broad Street and Market. And like you have to take buses otherwise. I would love to have a public transportation system like they have in Chicago or New York. You have any suggestions? LA that would be tremendous too, I would imagine.
Yeah, there's a lot of things about Philly I wish LA had.
I
can't really think of anything. The beach is nice.
And finally, from Bronson. My wife and I have been staying with in-laws in Bogota since December, and your pod has been my main connection with the English language since we arrived. Thanks to you guys, I can still remember my native tongue. I recently watched Beats, Rhymes, and Life, The Travels of a Tribe Called Quest, and I kept thinking of Q-Tip as Spike, the organized, structured producer who makes the show happen, and Mike as Fife Dog, the freewheeling, raw talent that gives the pod its picante. Aside from the fact that you guys don't have an adversarial relationship, is this a legit comparison?
I don't know enough. I like Tribe Called Quest. I don't know about enough the personalities of each guy to say.
Okay. I mean, I think so. Those guys really fucking hated each other. But he says, aside from that, I would say it is a fair comparison in the way that he made it, for sure.
Freewheeling. I don't consider myself freewheeling. Maybe I should start.
Well, but you're like the funny, off the cuff, on the prepare the thing. Like, sure. It's funny when people have hated me and told me to like get off of the podcast. The podcast would be so much better with Spike. I sort of chuckle and go like, all right, but there's not going to be a podcast if I'm not there.
It'd just be me recording like voice memos on my phone and just texting to people.
Yeah. And then the basketball question. As I increasingly get frustrated watching Dwight do dumb stuff, I ask myself, how many better backup centers even exist in the NBA? Center seems like a shallow position, and is it possible Dwight's inadequacies only seem so intolerable because he backs up Joel?
I think this is a great question, great correct point. And by the way, impressive to be doing them in English, in your native tongue still. Yeah, I think that it's just the drop off from Joel. A lot of it is. It was weird. Like Jokic for a number of years having Plumlee as a backup was like, well, let's get a guy who can do as close to a Jokic impression as any other backup center. You know, it's like he's passing, he's moving. He has Plumlee had a little more like screen setting and like rolling to the rim and being a good like, you know, finisher, I guess, around the rim. But with Embiid, it's just like there's just no one that is capable of doing that, and they have never had one. It was like, you know, Amir Johnson and Greg Monroe, and then Boban and Horford a little bit was, I think, the right idea in the Horford sense of like a little smaller, theoretically more mobile, although that was not the case. Pass the ball, move the ball, was a willing shooter from three. It's just like that kind of thing, like, would be right. There's just not that many of those guys, and especially don't want to pay someone $1 billion to do that as a backup. So they're still finding the right thing. I think Dwight is like closer. I think he's had moments where he's been very helpful, but I think in any version, any time when Joel's so good that any time when he's off the court, it's just going to be worse. But that's why I would love for them to invest pretty serious draft capital in, and I'm not a draft to center guy, but like I would like them to invest some draft capital in a shooting and defense stretch five. Like I don't need much else, but like if they can spread the floor and at least protect the rim in some percentage of as much as Joel does it, then I think that would be hugely helpful to the success of this team, with Joel off the court and with Simmons taking more of an offensive role in that capacity. Yeah,
I think it's a lot less about wherever Dwight ranks as in terms of backup centers, because I think he's clearly one of the best backup centers. It's more about what his skill set is, to your point. You know, you made a point when we were talking about DeAndre Ayton, and you said you think he would be like a top 10 both offensive and defensive center, and I scoffed at that. And I remember mentioning it to Sharp, and he was like, well, how many good centers are there even? Like how, you know, if he's that, you know, once you get to like 10 or 12, there's not a ton of good centers anyway. So I think it's a thin position. I agree. With Ben as the primary ball handler, Dwight doesn't work. It just doesn't work. Like they can get by a little bit. It's not about needing somebody better. It's about needing somebody that fits a little more appropriately. But, you know, Dwight has good 2-week periods and bad 2-week periods. Like, you know,
for sure. Yeah. Another guy I'm looking at in the draft is to potentially profile as a backup center is Kai Jones of Texas. He's a sophomore. He's super athletic, super smart, and has a burgeoning jumper. So it's tough because his team could use another, you know, you want Maxey to develop into that. If they trade Maxey, then it becomes, you know, future point guard that's like a quick scoring guard becomes more of a necessary position. But it'd be really nice to spend some draft capital on a backup five that can actually like live. Because it seemed like they tried to do it. Like Jonah Bolden would have been nice in that scenario, but just like never developed. I have no idea where he is actually right now. It'd be nice if they got one that's like, hey, we got it. It's check the box. We're good for a long time with this person, you know, backing up Joel for at least like, you know, 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know. Do you think they'd be able to use a rookie in that role though?
I think it depends. I mean, like a guy like Xavier Tillman, who is on Memphis and who was a 4-year player at Michigan State, right away is like, I'm a positive NBA player, and that was very clear that it would be. His upside is limited in the sense that like he's not a dynamic offensive player, and I think you can get a lot of those kinds of fine big men in like a Kem Birch type. I always go to Kem Birch. He's always the guy that you go to as like just a scrap heap guy, but I do like Kem Birch. But it would be nice to have someone that like is a little bit smarter, which Tillman is, and he was available in I think the early second round was when Memphis took him. And I think that, you know, drafting Jonah Bolden was super raw. I think it's going to be based on who you can get. Like there's a guy named Jay Huff I've mentioned before on Virginia, who's a 4-year player there, who is a good shooter and a good shot blocker, pretty slow laterally and stuff, but he's a smart player, and I think that's a guy that's like he could step in right now and be maybe fine. But there's, you know, drafting a guy that's a little younger, a little bit like needs to get there. I'm not against that either. I think that's still a worthwhile use of draft capital. But yeah, as far as counting on a rookie as a 5 is tough.
Yeah, B-Ball Paul's like 6'10", isn't he?
B-Ball Paul could be the answer. He could be the answer. Yeah. I think he's certainly a different kind of player than Joel, but he's long and he has good nose for the ball and he runs out in transition. I don't trust the shot. I don't trust the way the shot looks. It's tough, but I think he's certainly an interesting player for sure.
His nickname is Basketball. I mean, Jesus Christ.
A great one. Delaware has dropped the last 4 games, which is tough. After a 7-0 start, it's a real collapse of epic proportions. But I still.
Well, that's why they called upon Isaiah Joe
there you go.
for some. They needed some backup. All right, go Sixers. Go 2 more games till the All-Star break. Yeah, 2 more. I think got 2
so.
More. Yeah.
Have they announced who is going to be in the skills competition and all that crap?
No, I don't think so.
Shake should be in the skills competition.
Oh, like the one where they run up and down the court and throw the ball through the tire?
Yeah, he should be able to do that. He's at that level, I think.
Is his handle tight enough for that?
I think so. I think he's got a smoothness that could allow him to win that. I would love for Shake to be in the skills comp. Maybe that's a next year thing. Maybe he's still bursting onto the scene a little bit for normal people. But maybe next year. I don't know if they're offering it to people and they're being fuck that, I'm not going. But for a guy like Shake, who is late second round pick, first time getting a ton of minutes, that'd be pretty dope. I think for him, I would love it. 2 more games: Pacers on Monday night, and then at home against the Jazz. Yeah. And then the next game is the Bulls on the 11th. So that's why it would have been so nice to just take care of the Cavs, because Pacers Jazz is a tough way to end the first half of the season, and you kind of got to win them both to feel good about it, especially because the Jazz smoked them before, and the Pacers are a little bit struggling. It would be nice to go into the All-Star break in first place and feeling a little confident.
And then right after the break, they have 5 games in 7 nights. So it goes Bulls, Wizards back to back. Wizards are winning games at least. I'm not watching them, but they're winning games. Mm-hmm. Then Spurs, Knicks, and Bucks. So 5 and 7 is tough. So
regular season, right. We're just getting through it.
Yeah, just getting through it. Just ready to flip the switch. Always works for us. Are you down with TTP?
Yeah, like this.
If you don't fuck with me, then I won't fuck with you.
If you don't fuck with me,
then I won't fuck with you.
But if you fuck with me,
I'm gonna fucking kill you!
Time for Plan B.